Okay, we're good. All right. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order at 6:05 PM. 4 select board members present. First item, any public comments for items not on the agenda for discussion, not action? Seeing none, all right. And moving on to town reports.
Okay, what you see here on there, I'm gonna add a couple of things to it that are this just in category. The auditor, touch base on today, it is going to be mid-January. His staff is without power or working remotely right now. So they got bit by the storm pretty badly. We hired Krista Hayward as the new town clerk on January 2nd, 2024.
January what day?
Second.
January 2nd.
The town reconfiguration starts the week of the 8th, which is good news for all. Get some traction on that. There'll be a new website launched tomorrow, sometime between noon and 1. This requires no work from the employees at all. It's all done behind the scenes. No one will be here until probably about 5 minutes before they go live, and they may have a brief interruption, but the new website is very, very nice. Just a whole lot more user friendly and just it doesn't box inside. So I'm very pleased with it. It looks like a couple other towns that I've seen, and it's much easier to navigate for people to use it. So I think we win all the way around there. Marjorie was in on this past weekend. We are balanced up through October. November, we are chasing down one item to figure it out. Peter and I are gonna try to see what that is tomorrow. But at least we're only a month behind, and we may not even be that, if we can figure out what's going on. So it's one item, we'll be doing the research. With any luck, we could be up to date by the end of the week, so at least we're not 4 months behind. Bob and I talked about, we talked with people from Cumberland about the radio tower. They're gonna put together an agreement of time and break down the costing for that. State DEP, as we know, was here today, down at Ben's Cove and a few other places. You have in front of you something from unemployment. We got the new rates in. We got a semi discount, so it's not horrible, but they just have to send it out. The Eco Main one, that's the one that I wanted to make sure that you got a chance to read. Refuse cost is going up over 15% starting in the middle of March. So that's going to be a hit on 2024, and it's going to have to be budgeted for in 2025. That's not an insignificant amount. The same thing goes for recycling. There's a 9.5 increase there. Again, these go into effect, in the middle of, not 3/4 of the way through the fiscal year, so we have to account for some. Going forward, we're gonna have to budget for it, as well as probably take a hard look at the user fees. So just keep that in the back of your mind as you get into the FY25 budget process. Stone Wharf extension, we should have the final yes on that sometime in the next week. I got a confirmation on the email, but I just don't have the official piece of it. So we got a 6-month extension on that. Oh, dredging. I'm gonna speak with the people from the, Army Corps of Engineers tomorrow. That meeting's was scheduled for Monday, and of course, we all know what happened Monday. Right at the time the meeting was supposed to take place, we went to generator in the town hall, but we lost internet, so I couldn't do that. 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, to speak to the folks on the engineer, I will follow it up with a report of some kind, so that everybody will understand what's going on.
Good.
I am due to talk to the folks from the people who supply the payroll system about doing, looking at upgrading for an HR system that will do time tracking and HR and reporting. Time tracking will get rid of all the paper time sheets we handle today and do everything online, and approvals will take a lot less time. It'll be more efficient across the back end. And I did forward to Bob a brief note about some technical upgrades that I think that we need to put in place for the network to be performing best practice, if you will, and vital education and training and some resiliency that we may not have right now. So that is that for public services. You got the Chuck Road. You know, I kind of boiled it down a little bit. The big thing is that, you know, the floats came out without incident. Okay, we had a nice day to do it on. That was a big win there for us. The other thing is this past storm. On the whole, you know, usual trees and debris, and you know, all CMP around to help them out. You know, they need to stop moving stuff around. Nothing real serious into my attention at all. We had that, but I mean, I would say that, you know, again, we did fairly well. That's it for that.
Code officer report, usually the TA delivers that one.
There wasn't one.
It's in the packet.
Oh, it's in the packet?
I can hit on the high points of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If we would.
From Tammy to members of the select board and George Sutherland, update select board members, progress and activities since starting this position. Agreed to come on as a temporary employee, anticipated this would be only a month, then in the first couple of weeks, it turned out the person we had lined up wasn't available. Quite a lot of backlog and inquiries. I would add that she's now, for several weeks, has been up to date on inquiries and permitting. The second paragraph, agreed to stay on and begin enjoying the workload and has agreed to stay on for as long as needed. Trying to get out here on Friday afternoons. Doesn't yet have a replacement fully functional for the list that we used to have that was a Google Doc with our prior town administrator, but she's issued 5 building permits, 1 electrical permit and 1 subsurface permit in December. I intend to help implement easily understood systems that keep staff and citizens up to date on activities on the island. Look forward to meeting you all and hope you have a great holiday season. Any questions from the board on the town administrator report or the code officer report? Mark?
On the bottom of your report, George, you mentioned a couple of vehicles that have been left by Ron Douglas. He was able to get his Jeep moved off of South Road.
Yeah.
But the black truck is still down at Chandler's Cove parking lot in the end. And I think we should remove it, even though there's no imminent snowstorm coming. That is town property. The vehicle hasn't been registered since 2016, according to the sticker. I'm not even sure he has clear title to the vehicle anymore. It used to be Don Snyder. I'd like to make a motion to direct the town administrator to have Public Works move the black Dodge pickup truck from Chandler Cove parking area to a choice of town property.
Good. Was there a second?
Second.
Second by David. Any conversation?
You said to move it where?
wherever they want.
Town property.
Town property?
Yeah.
Discussion with the board or George? Carol?
So, I have a question,
Yep.
we'll move it. Do you plan on issuing a citation?
I don't know, that would be up to you and the park enforcement, attendant, being a bit careful with my comment, I'm not sure. A financial citation will have any effect or.
I just bring up as an additional option that is at the disposal of the board. I did not mention that because the Jeep was gone.
Yeah,
And
that wasn't my intention, I think we could just move the truck and then wait for any communication.
okay,
Am I correct in remembering that there are a bunch of tickets on that truck?
I'm sorry,
Am I correct in remembering that there are already a bunch of citations on that truck?
I'm not aware of that.
Okay, maybe I may be mixing up with another vehicle.
and the expectation of when you want this done, please.
Soon as feasible.
Okay.
All right, there's a second. Any discussion from Carol?
Yeah, so that was sort of the gist of my question is, how has the owner been notified? I mean, are there tickets that have accumulated or what's the process?
I don't know the answer to that question. George, do you have any?
Reach out to Sharon, so that he's taken it.
Yep.
It seems like we'd wanna, have tried the normal route before we go to toll. But I don't know, maybe that's not the process.
Could I just,
Yeah, Mark, go ahead.
I think normally, if I may be so bold, that is the process. In this case, I'm not sure the individual has a current, residence. Knowing from the sheriff's department, he has no driver's license. The vehicle likely has never been registered since it was left in his yard. It seems like an extraordinary situation.
There's all the appearances of being abandoned.
Yeah.
I would,
Maybe doing him a favor.
and simply by it being there, the length of time it's been there, with the current bylaw states that, you are no overnight parking. So, it's been there at least a week, if not longer. So I have the problems safe ground. Your decision to notify the owner ahead of time is strictly the purview of the board.
I think the fact that it's not registered has something to bear on it as well. I don't know what that is from legal.
So that was kind of the gist of my question. So it's not registered, it's, yeah, okay.
Right.
Apparently abandoned.
Apparently abandoned, yeah.
I don't have any comments.
Okay, any other comments from the board? Okay, there's a motion on the floor. All in favor, raise your hand. 5 in favor. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, George. Other questions, comments from the board relative to the TA report, code officer report? None?
No.
All right, moving on. Regular business. First item to hear an update from the facilities committee and take any necessary action. Ralph, were you here to give an update? At one point Beth had asked me to speak up.
Okay. Did everybody, I didn't get the drawings and the, get that email to you?
Yes. You're talking about for the new fire department building, new public safety building?
And did you get the email about the, placement of the radio?
Yes, that's all in the packet.
Yeah,
Yep.
okay.
Yep.
So we get it all.
Yep.
Any questions on that?
Let me add a couple more things. So at the last facilities committee meeting, the final conceptual design and the current proposed construction budget as, I won't say quoted, but as outlined by Dukas, which is a contractor who's done business with the island before, was presented and described by Port City as consistent with the level of information with which they've gone out with other small towns to go after public money for such projects. So those two deliverables are now, as you've seen in the packet, have been handed over from the Facilities Committee to the Select Board. Facilities Committee envisions next steps on that front being to work with the Finance Committee and also to begin conversations with legislative representatives, not asking for money, but rather learning how one goes about best asking for money from those legislators and their staff. So that would be the update on the Facilities Committee per se. There's also a meeting with the three towns relative to the tower. Yep, and there was a memo from Nat Tupper included in the packet, which describes the current state of agreement in terms of who pays for what. And in this last meeting, the additional item of the electrical engineering and design proposal that we brought to the table a couple of weeks ago, a couple of meetings ago. And the group agreed that that cost would be shared equally in three ways by the three towns. This is the cost of designing the upgraded power coming from the road to the town building, going past broadband, and then through the town building back to the tower. And the location of the central office for broadband and the location of the very small 8x10 shed for the equipment for the tower. That design work is partially complete. Right after that meeting, a few questions that the electrical engineer still had were answered. And we're now waiting to hear back from Port City and the electrical engineer, the final site plan and the final design information. At that point, the next step would be to begin the permitting process with the town of Chebeague, apply for planning board review, that kind of thing. And that's all I had from, as I guess I'm a member of the Facilities Committee, so that's why I'm giving the update. Questions, Mark?
Can I start with the agreement, the memo from Nat Tupper?
Sure, yep.
I understand everything that I've read. A lot of it makes perfect sense. I do understand that it's being sent to Bernstein Shore for a MOU draft probably, that will come back to us at some point.
Yep.
My specific question, maybe Ralph can help me with this, if you don't mind me
Please.
asking.
Yep.
Ralph. On page 1, it says, Town of Chebeague is also considering replacement of the existing 50,000 watt generator on site with a larger capacity generator to service the radio tower and related equipment, as well as other municipal structures and applications. I wasn't aware that we were thinking about that, I guess, and I'm not asking that question in a negative tone. I'm just asking what the thinking might be, and is it also thinking about a fuel change for the actual generator going from diesel to propane?
No, it's about the size, and we still, do we have this engineers?
We don't have a response yet from the engineer about whether the additional requirements of the tower, which turn out to be pretty small, how that would fit into the total picture. But the basic picture is that we had a generator that was established to cover the current tower and the current town office and public safety building needs. And now we're adding to that a little bit of draw relative to the new equipment on the tower and some amount of draw from the central office for the broadband project. Once the engineer finishes his calculations, we'll know whether or not we need to upgrade the generator. And part of that calculation, I believe they may come back with us and say, you could be fine with it as is, or they might say you could be fine with it as is if you give up these 5 elements during a power outage.
Yeah.
Or they might say it has to be replaced.
Okay,
We've been told we've had mixed reviews from electricians on it that was available. Yeah, that's what's possible.
okay. And it says in here, if we have to upgrade the generator, that cost of upgrade and, maintenance falls on town of Chebeague. Is that what you're reading, Bob?
Where are you seeing that, Mark?
Page 2 of that memo, that upper paragraph A, new generator to be provided by, operated and maintained by the town of Chebeague. And my specific question to this is not, you know, why is this being recommended possibly, and do we need it? It's where would the funding come from for this in the tower? That would be my main question.
Yeah.
If we had to upgrade one of those, it's probably a $40,000 undertaking.
Correct.
So I think before we upgrade that, I think we'd be looking at shaving off other things.
Yeah. And I'm not saying we couldn't come up with that money.
Right.
I don't think we're gonna need to, because the long-term plan is probably gonna be changing, so.
Yeah. I would also suggest that, once the engineering report comes, the electrical engineering report comes back,
Yeah.
we'll know more about what's driving the need for upgrade. So if it's currently capable of 500 amps, and the town currently needs 490 of those amps,
Yeah.
and broadband needs another 100 amps, and the tower needs another 20 amps.
Yeah.
That would give us an idea of what's driving it, which could then lead to a conversation.
Yeah.
If, on the other hand, the need for a new generator was driven solely by the tower, I would think it would be up to us to go back to the 3 parties and say, can we talk about this again?
Yeah, but I think, Bob, you guys are referring to the engineering report for the new upgrade of the tower and communication systems and the broadband and the building.
Yes, yes,
This one that's in our packet is only an assessment of the existing building.
right. So
Right.
this memo is several months old,
Okay,
and Nat just added on at the end of the old memo.
Okay.
So when he wrote that section of the memo you're talking about, I believe
Yeah.
we didn't yet know about the possible need for a new generator.
okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, so this is 919, then 1211. Okay, I didn't get, I was wondering.
Right, yeah, he just added on, he tacked on.
Could I ask another
Sure.
question?
Just,
With regards to the proposed new building, design for public safety building, I understand that they're going to talk to the newly formed finance committee of the town and possibly the congressional leadership. And maybe after that, will we, along with the facilities committee, consider some public hearings, some public
absolutely. Yep,
workshop?
Yep, yep.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank
I think the thought is that, when this project would move forward would be driven by lots of things, one of which is public input on
you. Yeah,
what's going on. There's also, when is it anticipated that such funding will be available, won't be available, funding support from the federal government? And then the third element is, what is the town's appetite for financing whatever portion the town would have? So one of the things that the finance committee will be working on is sort of a schedule of bonds, bond roll-offs, bond roll-ons, and that kind of thing, and how that impacts our tax situation in the years going forward, starting from our new budget year going forward. So several elements in play at the same time that would help dictate a recommendation from this board as to when, and from the facilities committee.
Yeah.
A recommendation is to when to begin moving forward.
Yeah, the retirement of the Cumberland debt, I believe, is the end of 2027. 27, 28, or whatever. Something like that.
I think one thing that we really need to think about is the big driving force behind it is the need for it.
Yeah.
So we need to, also, we need to discuss that and understand that public needs to be.
For sure.
So, we need to take that, the need, and weigh that against the finances, but, that's becoming more and more of an issue. We needed living quarters, so we need to figure out how to move forward with that.
Carol?
Yeah, so to that end, I think it would be helpful, Beth was here months ago, but I think it would be helpful to have maybe a workshop with the Board of Selectmen and Facilities Committee where we kind of hear that, and have a chance to ask questions, because I think that's part of the picture for us making decisions as a board. And the other part is, I would ask you to send this on to the Finance Committee right away, the draft plan, so that they can start adding that to their stuff. They have some estimates for the storm here, but I don't think they have anything related to the public works. And then the other, public safety. The other thing is, this does or doesn't include, so the cost here is 4.8 million, is that it in round numbers, right?
I think.
The 4.8 million, and that does not include renovations so that does not include turning the town office into, the former fire station into a formal town office. And I think that would be, I don't know what it's gonna take to get an estimate of that. I thought this would be. So Port City will have that.
Yeah, that's step, that's the.
Well, I think in terms of financing, that's one thing we'll want to consider. Is it one step that we finance, or is it a two-step process? Because I think that's important to know what that number is, even if we're not gonna do it right now. So that's the other piece that would be good to have. And so is it your understanding that Port City's gonna have a number for that?
Yeah, we're working on that.
Okay.
They threw in a 1.5 million one right here.
Right, but that's not in the final budget here. That's all I was trying. And then the only other question I had, which may be related, this figure here. So is this a Port City? It doesn't say who created it.
So that drawing that you're looking at was driven off of data from Port City, but it was actually drawn by Michael Porter. Port City gave us a drawing that was more difficult to read, and they were unavailable in the time frame between when we got that piece versus when we were meeting with Yarmouth. Michael agreed to take that data. The Port City drawing did not have the trenches clearly shown from the pole to the broadband and from the broadband to the building. So it's the digital data from the Port City drawing with Michael having added in the route of the trench, if you will.
Will we have a final drawing from Port City
Will.
at some point?
We will.
Because I think it's important we're paying for their expertise, and I kind of want to, and that would be what gets submitted to the planning board is their drawing, right?
Much more than that drawing, but yes.
Right, but that would be part. Yep.
Good.
Forget one, because, in the drawing, it shows the 8x10 building in back of the tower.
Yep.
I would highly recommend we don't put it in back of the tower, put it further away, take excavating. I think it will fit in front of it, or at least on the right side, maybe the left side. I think closer to the buildings.
So that's the Yarmouth Cumberland radio building?
Yeah.
And so that was placed behind by them?
Yeah,
Okay, so it's the Yarmouth Cumberland Chebeague radio building.
right,
Right, but I
And it
mean,
was located where it's located by Port City.
yeah.
That was their recommendation to locate it there. What they were trying to create was a clear driving and snowplow path all the way around the building. What they've done, locating it where they're currently showing it, is put it on to an existing hillside that would have to be excavated. And it's a little bit further back, so the facilities committee needs to have further conversation to say, what's the trade-off between the benefits of this location versus the benefits of locating it more closely? So it's an interim situation, it's
Okay.
certainly not.
so I don't need to take this as the final plan.
Right. And Carol, were you suggesting that we have a formal workshop with the,
I don't know what the timing should be, but I think it would be good for us to get, to get together with the facilities committee. This is a big expenditure and it sounds like we're moving forward on it some speed. So I think it would be worthwhile. And I think it'd be best not to have a representative come to the select board meeting, but rather have the two groups meet. Nothing against that approach. It's just, I think it would be better.
and should we have Port City there?
Yeah, I would, yeah.
We've discussed that, we just want to get further along. in the
Right,
planning.
so you guys could figure out the timing.
Yep. Okay, and, another question, so, okay. Yes, David?
I would just add, a representative from the broadband committee to that.
Yes.
Just to
Yeah.
cover the bases.
Yep. Okay. Anything else on that item? Carol?
I guess just what is the process that you are going to use to reach out to the congressional delegation? Is the town administrator gonna do that?
To be
Is-
determined. It's not yet determined. It was determined that it was going to be the town administrator and the select board representative to the facilities committee. And then our town administrator has stepped down. So it's to be determined.
I just think it would be good to make it a consistent, organized effort.
I think it needs to be extremely well organized if we're gonna increase our chance to whatever degree we can of success in the long run.
And I can tell you that for last year, April 15th was the deadline for a couple of the congressional offices. I don't.
For actual
These
applications,
columns, came, it was April 15th.
for actual requests, yeah.
And the requests are fairly, they don't need it's helpful to have this, but I mean, they're not that involved. Narrative wise. It's not like doing the grant application.
Right. Okay. Anything else on that topic? Okay, moving along, item 23-107, any comment from the public on that topic?
Thanks for asking.
Okay. Item 23-107, to hear a recap from the December 2023 DEP visit to Chebeague and take any necessary action. Carol, can you give just a brief recap of what we did today?
So the first visit was to Bennett's Cove at the request of the town, but I also think the residents made a similar request, and there were 6 members of the Department of Environmental Protection, plus 2 people from the Maine Geological Survey, and they visited the site. We talked about different permitting, standard regulations, which are very restrictive, to put it mildly, and what permitting requirements might be. The way I understand it, the upshot of that is that we will be hearing back from them in the next week or 2 with a response and kind of update from that site visit, I think, about the feasibility of any permitting, or, what that process would be and what their concerns might be. So I think they thoroughly understand the location, the project as we envision it, and I think we have to wait to hear back from them about what the options might be. The second site visit was to what we call Sandy Point, and that was the same 6 members of the DEP, the 2 Maine geological members, and then Tim Forrester, who is the representative for the applicants who submitted applications for a shorefront armoring project in the stabilization project along that stretch of shoreline, sort of, south of Sandy Point Beach. And they spent a fair amount of time there discussing the technical details of that project. We were on site, but we weren't really kind of participating in that conversation. It was the application technical review. From there, we went down to Indian Point because to address a pre-application, I believe, or maybe it's an application for the dock, I think, but the DEP basically got to see the status of the Indian Point and the erosion that's occurred over the past couple of years. Then the last site visit was to the lake property for a pre-application visit for another shorefront armoring project. So they visited 4 sites today. We accompanied them. The one that was of direct relevance to the town was Bennett and also. And as we discussed at the last meeting, I had sent an email, which I copied all the board members on, about the concerns that we have about an armoring project near Sandy Point and how it might negatively impact the beach system. So I think that's it. Anything else you want to add?
No, I was a little surprised at the number of people from DEP who came out. I was also a little surprised at the number of years of experience that came out. They've had obviously, or apparently, a lot of turnover in staff as of late. Positive meeting, good insight from them, good input from community, good questions were asked. And thank you, Carol, for getting them out here. As some of you know, it's been difficult to make contact, to get a response from the DEP.
And I forgot to mention, there were about, 8 members of the public present at Bennett's Cove,
Yes.
I think. So we had, 8 people there, but there's a lot of projects going on. I guess that's it. And we did ask them, and originally we thought about trying to have a workshop on the same day, which good thing we didn't try to do that. But I do think they are willing, they had expressed willingness to come back in January or early in the year, January, February, and do an overall workshop with interested parties on all things sort of coastal permitting. And I think that would be really valuable for the community and the select board and the planning board. And so we should plan it well enough ahead that people can attend. And I'd be happy to follow up with them on that. That was Rob Woodler, the bureau director, who made that suggestion.
Any other comments from the board relative to that, Mark?
Carol, Bob, I was wondering if, with respect to Sandy Point, were there any specific observations or comments from the DEP members or Pete Slavinsky about the dune grass road that is through there, or the general condition of the site or parking of vehicles down there?
So we were actually self-evaluated, we weren't looking, they didn't even look at that location, so basically we looked at the area where there's a application
Oh, I
for a
see.
natural resource protection permit, so it
Gotcha.
was the Dayton, Nottabon, and Hackle properties.
Yeah.
And so we didn't even look at that.
Gotcha. The reason for my question is, I'm hoping at some point we can get someone to look at that, and I think Carol and I and Vika started a conversation with the new homeowners, the Castines, about some concerns that they had. And we're hoping to continue those discussions, and any groundwork by the regulatory people may be helpful.
Good.
Okay?
Yep. Other comments? No. All right. I would just add one more thing. I made the comment today, I hope it was accurate, at Bennett's that this was the beginning of information gathering, but that should the town decide to propose moving forward on any improvements at Bennett's, that there would certainly be the opportunity for at least one public workshop, public input, comments from the community, that kind of thing. Is that okay with the board to have that comment on record?
Pardon me.
All right,
Yeah, I think I had said that in an earlier meeting,
Yep.
and the planning board would have their own public
Yep.
hearing process, but even prior to that.
public workshop. Yeah. Other comments from the board on that topic? Comments from the public?
Yeah, thank you, Bob. So,
Pam, can you?
oh, yeah. We did, ask, the residents of the Cove, did ask the DEP to investigate the damage, to the Cove, and we copied the town on that letter. So the letter was sent, in August, and my understanding is that that investigation is ongoing, and today was part of that investigation. So that's my understanding.
Okay, thank you. Other comments from the public? All right, thank you. Moving on, item 23-108, to discuss the need for joint meetings between the select board and the Chebeague Island School and other parties, and determine who from the select board should attend. This was specifically regarding budget items. There was an email that had started circulating as we were drafting this agenda, and looking for specifically inviting me to come to a meeting between a few members of the school committee and the rec center to talk about specifically about the $8,000 annual fee that the school pays to the rec center. After the agenda was written, the date of the meeting was set, and it happened to be the day that I flew home. So I went ahead and attended the meeting. I said, I'm not here representing the select board. I'm here as an individual member of the select board and will not speak to anything on behalf of the select board. In that meeting, the school committee and the select board decided on a process as to how they will talk about who charges what for whom. And I did make the point that it is my belief that any conversations and arrangements they have relative to financial money moving back and forth between those two parties is good information for the budgeting process that the town goes through, the select board goes through, but is independent of any requests that come from the rec center or any other nonprofit. There was at one point a suggestion was made that by one party, well, if the school's not going to pay the rec center that money, we'll just have to increase our request to the town. And I said, I would hope you understand that there's no quid pro quo here. That's a separate relationship. So that was one of the two meetings that I was referring to when that item got put on the agenda. The other conversation that the school would like to have is with CTC. That meeting is not yet scheduled. So at this point, I would ask first if there's any comments on what I said about last night's meeting, but more importantly, secondly, who from the select board, if anybody, would be willing to, should attend a meeting between the school committee and CTC relative to finances and budget and that kind of thing. And it kind of bleeds over into our conversation down in item 5, budget goals and strategies discussion, but Carol.
So there's already this group of the select board that is meeting with CPC, so I think if you wanted to, I think there's sort of too many side meetings going. I personally would prefer to see these issues come up in the budget process as the board, and not have these sort of separate meetings, because frankly, we can't offer any an individual from the select board can't really do much, and so I don't know what the value is. I think more productive would be to have either all the parties in one place and have a conversation, or have it part of the budget process is to review, people can come and comment on exactly those things in the budget process. I think we do have an MOU in place that we haven't really exercised completely with the Chebeague Rec Center, that perhaps this year we should ask for the information that's in the MOU. And that might help inform the discussion. So I think we have an MOU arrangement with the rec center. We should follow that and that process. And I understand the school may have some issues, but I don't really think it's good to have a single select board member attend that kind of meeting, because I don't see how we can, address it. I think it'd be better if the school has some issues about the rec center budget to come to the board and express those as part of the budget process.
Okay, so couple things. One, I did send that request from the school committee to have someone at that meeting on to everybody, before it was scheduled. Secondly, I think what the school is trying to do is help the rec center, given that their budgeting year is different than the towns and the school's budgeting year. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I just think that's why they wanted to go ahead and have the meeting sooner as opposed to later. So I think there's a difference between conversations between the school and a nonprofit as opposed to the nonprofit's conversation with the town requesting money. I don't know how the town plays a role in the conversation between the rec center and the school.
I don't think we do.
Agreed.
And so I don't think we should attend that kind of, I'm not trying to go into the meeting. I just don't think that's an appropriate way to operate. I just don't see how our presence, we have no authority in that kind of setup. I do think that we ultimately will approve an appropriation to the rec center as a board, and that would be a good time to have a conversation about that.
Okay,
And
so
I understand that sort of, we split it out into a municipal school district paying and the town paying, but all we can really control is what we pay.
So relative to the conversation that the school committee wants to have with CTC, same logic applies. The town should not be there.
Well, the difference with that is there was this committee initiated by CTC to discuss these issues, and so the committee structure already exists for that, but again, I mean, we don't have a contractual arrangement as a town with CTC, correct?
We do have an MOU.
We have an MOU, so I think that would be, I don't know, Mark, maybe you have some thoughts. I guess I don't know what the game plan is in terms of, what we can offer. It's just a discussion about what the options are. Yeah, that's productive, but if it's to try to make financial changes, we can't do that.
Well, I would suggest that we try to find, so we've had two requests from the school, one to meet with nonprofit A, one to meet with nonprofit B with them. I would suggest we come up with a strategy that makes sense for both of them, as opposed to saying, we're not gonna sit in on the meeting for this one, but we are gonna sit in for the meeting on this one.
So in my world, that would be come to a select board meeting and have that discussion
Okay.
as part of the budget process.
And Mark?
Yeah, I agree. Carol and I have met 2 times now, I believe, with CPC, trying to start some positive conversations that we can bring back to this board and they can bring back to their board to try to keep things working smoothly between the town and the CPC and the town, CPC and the town of Yarmouth for the wharf agreement area only. And some, maybe some stuff with the parking lot stuff, but I think I agree with Carol. I don't want to say no to the school. We're not interested in your request to help you talk with anyone, but I think it probably should be a bigger picture, bigger group discussion, more formalized, that relates directly to the budget. Because it sounds to me like conversation with the Chebeague Transportation Company may be trying to change some policy as much as how things are charged.
Between the school and, yeah.
Yeah, and that can get tricky.
and they have an actual contract.
You do.
So I guess, you know, it would be okay for the school to come to us and express their concerns, so we're all informed. I think that would be useful. And then we can think about that as we go through the budget process, but kind of having one board member participate in separate meetings doesn't really seem productive. to me. And so that's, I would rather have them come to us and talk to the board. If we want to convene a meeting of, you know, all parties, great. I think that could be productive. A workshop between CPC, the board, and the school committee, and a workshop between CRC, the board, and the school committee. Those two things might be useful. But that's how I personally, and I would do it in the context of the budgets. But that's me.
Okay. Mark?
And maybe we try to determine if the select board and the Chebeague School Board have the same concerns and have the same goals, and then consider engaging the third party. Does that make sense?
It does, it does. I would also point out, I don't think the school committee was trying to invite one select board member. I think they were trying to invite the select board. I think they just addressed it to the chair. And then I passed it on to the board.
Right, but then we'd have to, I mean, I kind of agree with Mark. I think the conversation should be between the school and the select board. Let's figure out what we agree on or don't agree on, and then we can come up with a strategy on how to address that.
I think,
It could be directly through our budget process, or it could be through a combination of the budget process, but, I know they have some concerns, but I don't actually know kind of what exactly they are and what they would like to change.
yeah. The one other thing that did, the person leading the finance conversation for the school committee made clear last night, their reason for wanting to begin these conversations stems directly back to last year's town meeting. They feel they want to do a much better job this year at being open and transparent with the public about what they're paying for, what it costs them, and they want to be much more aggressive at cost control than maybe they have been in the past. I'm paraphrasing, but that's a sense of what I heard last night.
So that would be good to hear from them,
Yeah.
and I would also recommend they talk to the finance committee. I mean, I think the finance committee could, it would be good for them to understand what financial issues they're struggling with.
Is that part of the finance committee's charge at this point?
Well, they're gonna be looking at how that committee is gonna be set up, and, you know, I don't know if they're envisioning this kind of an issue. Contractual arrangements with Chebeague nonprofits being challenging.
Yeah, and in particular, when it's a three-party arrangement as opposed to a two-party arrangement. All right, am I correct in assuming there's the only situations we currently have with budget issues that are three-party in nature would be town, I think, town rec school?
No? I believe all we have in the recreation center is which I brought to the board last year, is a MOU.
Right, right.
So it's not three-party.
Yeah, it's not, okay, yeah, that's right, that's right.
And then with CPC, Mark, I didn't know, I probably didn't know. We have an MOU. We don't actually have a financial contract.
Yeah, and if I may, Bob.
Yeah.
I haven't read through that MOU in a number of years. A lot of it has to do with the agreement of the rescue and our maintenance of the ramps and the floats on both sides. That would be the meat of it. But, I just want to suggest that if you chat with the school board and they would like to meet with the select board, it would be helpful, in my opinion, to get some sort of a memo from them up front with outlining some of their specifics of concerns and goals. Does that make sense?
It does. All right, other comments on that topic? So at this point, when the school committee decides they're going to meet with CTC, they're meeting with CTC, not the select board joining them.
I think if they wanna, I would go with what Mark just said, I think we need to hear from them directly what they have concerns about. I'm not precluding a meeting subsequent to that, but I certainly wouldn't jump in a meeting part.
Yeah, and again, I kind of feel the same way. I think maybe if we, are clear from each direction of what we're hearing, and we're sort of, in consensus, if you will, then I think we may consider scheduling a meeting with CTC after that. I'm not sure sending one or two select board members, based on what we've heard from them so far, which is not much. I haven't heard many specifics. I've heard one or two from the school board chair, I think personally, but that's just a conversation between she and I quickly. So I think we need more, and I think it could almost be a little bit counterproductive if we just jump into it.
Okay. Right. Anything else, David? Josh? Good? All right. Public, any comment on that?
It may be a sidebar, but I'm wondering, do you have a file of all the MOUs that the town is accountable for that you can look at?
It's up in the cloud somewhere.
Just keep them all in our head.
Yeah, I haven't reviewed stuff like that for a long time.
Okay.
Thinking about Josh, like how would he know what's in this MOU?
I don't know anything else.
I always call Herb and he comes up with.
These are bonds.
Okay, so moving on to item 23-110, to discuss a potential workshop on parking at the Stone Pier.
23-109.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I checked that off too early.
David,
I just wanted to respond to Pam. I believe those MOUs on the website, the town website. I may be mistaken, but I think they're there. So,
They might be.
Okay. We'll look into that, Pam.
Well, Josh.
Item 23-109, to discuss the iWork software for code enforcement and take any necessary action. There's a copy of that proposal. I would just say that after a couple of conversations with, I think it started out with, I had a conversation with him, then Tammy and I had a conversation with him, and then George had a conversation with him, if I'm not mistaken. Their price came down pretty dramatically. Their pricing is based on the size of town, so that's works in our favor. The implementation and setup cost, they basically struck 3,500, 1,000, and 4,900 from the setup cost, and just gave us the basically giving us a setup for free, as I understand it. It's a $5,000 annual fee for the software. Is that how you understand it, George?
Yeah. This, the setup fee alone is there's a lot of money in that. We gain from that. We just can't so much in the way of efficiency and stop the use of paper as talked about earlier today. I reviewed the software. It's a very nice piece of software, and it's not that difficult to use, so it works.
Sure.
So do I understand correctly, is it a $5,000 annual fee and a $5,000 one-time setup fee? It's
$5,000 annual fee.
Because I see an annual subscription fee for 5,000 and a one-time setup for 5,000. So am I confused?
Grand total, year one, $5,000. And then
Okay.
$5,000 a year thereafter.
I guess I just read it wrong. So for starting in, say, January 2024, it's a $5,000 fee until January 2025.
Right.
So then the other question, of course, is where would the money come from?
Correct.
And is there an idea? Proposal?
I don't have an idea or proposal.
I mean, it seems like a good idea, this quote is only valid till the end of the year, so.
Correct.
I mean, is there enough money in code enforcement for this? And is it an appropriate use of that, or?
How has the town used the funds collected from code enforcement for that? Has it been used to plow back into the?
Not directly,
Not directly.
as far as I know.
This is part of general fund that we expressed out about recycle, not as an additional.
Yeah.
I mean, I think this is a good thing to do, it's a good expenditure, I just don't know where the money is gonna come
Right.
from. And because we're already probably stretching our administrative budget, the general administrative
Right.
budget, I'm a little leery of taking it out of that. I kind of nailed the contingency pretty good already, so I'm a little.
Yeah.
I don't know, is there someplace that is appropriate? There's no real technology is under administrative, is that right?
Could I ask a question too?
Please.
Technology's been stretched. Are you talking about technology line and admin?
Yeah, so that's,
We've upgraded our computer systems and we've stretched that line item, in my opinion, so this $5,000 needs to come from somewhere immediately. Moving forward, I think we can obviously put it in if we adopt it, put it in the code enforcement. And if you look at, I don't mean to simplify things and make things sound better than they are, but if you look at revenues on the first page of the finance report, if you look at permits, which starts at 366, 367, and 368, there's plenty of money, plenty of revenues projected to come in. We project a budget of 15,000 for building permit, 1,500 for electrical, and 2,500 for plumbing. So there's plenty of revenues coming in my opinion, to help offset an increase if we propose to increase the code enforcement budget for 2024, 25.
Right.
Get my point?
I do, yeah.
And is the point of adopting this, George and others involved, to go away from paper and make it electronic and make it better? Is that the whole point?
Yes.
As well as the ability to collect the fees online.
Okay,
So that there's, like, at the time of the application, you can pay the fee. It rolls right through, we're not chasing that down, one less step, making the whole process extremely efficient.
okay. And it appears in the proposal to have ample support from the company.
Yes,
From
it does.
from the provider.
The other benefits that I would point out to the system, right now, in the past year, we've had issues with access to building permits.
Mhm.
With this system, we can program from the user side, we can program what anybody can see on any permit at any point in time. The applicant can see it, staff can see it, we can set up visibility for the public, so that that neighbor that wants to say, hey, I want to see the permit for what's going on next door, doesn't have to call the town office. They can go online, pull up that property, and it'll show what we've determined can be shown. To me, that's one of the biggest benefits, is avoiding some of these difficulties that we had last year.
Yeah.
Okay.
And my question is not based on being against it.
I understand.
My question is based on being ignorant of it.
Right.
And probably inept at it if I have to try to make it happen.
So before we get to the other questions, I just want to point out, George's question was, how have we in the past used revenues as an offset of costs? I don't know the answer to that question. My assumption is that revenues have gone into the undesignated fund
Right.
balance.
That's
they've
what,
gone into the general revenue, they're general, we sometimes look at the relative offset, but we have not designated that.
yeah, there's no defined process that says X amount of fees taken will automatically be put back.
Right, and in some towns, the code enforcement officer is actually paid out of the fees.
Right.
Yeah, not on common practice, yes.
The second point I would make is that, this is certainly not a guarantee, but
I'll have two spots.
this report would indicate that, year to date, we've spent 30% of our budgeted money for code enforcement, and 5 months divided by 12 months is 41%. That's a difference of 11%. 11% times 40,000 is 4,400. So that gets us partway there. But we had some time in there where Tammy was just getting started and was only billing a few hours per week. I think her hours per week have gone up a bit, but nowhere near the hours per week that we budgeted. So that doesn't get at it fully. George now thinks he hasn't.
I do, because I looked at this before and I was double checking.
Yep.
To cover the $5,000 cost, we currently have budgeted $4,000 for office equipment, we spent nothing. And we have for contract services, $1,395.
What line? What budget?
Where are you?
Look at,
It's not planning, is it?
no, so it comes out of that.
Admin, okay.
Page 2?
Yeah, it's. Sorry. We'll get it on. No. Page 2.
Oh, 3,300, George,
Yep,
office supplies.
yep, 1,300. And contract services, 5,000. Contract services covers our average work fee, okay? It's a great work on. We could probably, we could take 3,000 out of one, and 2,000 out of the other, and you wouldn't be short in either one.
Okay, thanks. Carol?
I think given that we're under on our code, I understand we may have accelerated costs, but I think we're way under on our code. And to keep it clean, I would suggest we appropriate it out of 2,400 code enforcement. I don't know if, and actually this software is for, 6 months of this fiscal year, so it's possible we could appropriate 2,500 for this. You know, in other words, we can pay it out of this budget, but maybe we've done a creative accounting, not illegal, to capture the other 2,500 in 2024 plus the new subscription. So next year we'd be doing 5,000.
Next year we'd be doing 5,000. We do
But I
20,000
think,
this year.
if you think in terms of 2,500 will get appropriated for this fiscal year.
Mhm.
And then because I think if we can go up to 10% over, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's almost the cost of the software, so I think we just go with the code and keep it simple.
Okay. Can you,
Does that seem reasonable to you, George?
Yeah, if the board feels comfortable that everything, based on everything we know, what we project going forward with respect to, her time and how it's been going,
Right.
reasonably assume, yeah, I would say that's not a bad decision. If you weren't looking at that, I was looking at the other part of the budget, and said, I can come up with that to cover it and still be able to do, you'd still be able to do work. Okay.
yeah.
But yeah, if you feel comfortable based upon what you're seeing to go forward, and then knowing that you can go plus 10. That would be, you're right, it's the cleanest way to do it, but plan B is the other way.
Mark?
Like the-
I'm sorry, David had his hand up a while ago. Yes.
Sorry, you got a lot of.
So 2 questions, how did you learn about this software or who recommended it? And secondly, how does the town office feel about this project?
So I can answer the first question. I had started looking for solutions like this before we met, before Tammy called us up and offered to be our interim code officer. This is not the software I was looking at. The one I was looking at is one that I'd gotten a lead on from GP Cog. In conversations with Tammy, she said, oh, I know that one you're looking at. It's okay. There's a better one. And, oh, by the way, this other one that I've used before is priced based on the size of your town. You really ought to talk to them. So I called them up, got a demo, talked to Tammy more. Tammy said, let's have a meeting with them together. So that's how we heard about them. In terms of how the town office staff feels about it, I'll let you guys speak.
I don't have any, I don't.
I think what I, maybe Vika offered that if people could pay online,
Right.
that would
So,
simplify things for the town office.
right,
Because right now,
that's the only way we get involved is when it comes to the payment.
yeah, and for right now, I mean, there's, they think the clerk's office gets involved in the treasurer part of it after the fact.
Right.
And it's usually like, right now, there's a stack of them that come in when they get approved and all of that. So, you know, we're just having to play catch up to make sure everything's posted on time. And then, you know, it gets put into the revenue portion. This way, the user can play, you know, pay it online, it's done. So,
The other staff implication I would offer is that in the past, different code officers have had different arrangements in the town office. Wouldn't call them formal, but there was time spent by town staff making copies, answering questions, forwarding things. We currently have a volunteer doing that work. At some point, if we keep doing the paper thing, we're gonna have to, especially with our current code officer, go back to that informal arrangement of the office doing some copying and some scanning and emailing and that kind of thing. And this would preclude that. So you would no longer have paper permits coming into the office looking to be matched up with checks and that kind of thing. It would be an online process.
And one last question, then, it's $5,000 for the first year. Does that price hold for the next 2 to 3 years, or do we know?
3 years. Yeah.
What's that again?
3 years.
3 years.
Yeah.
Good, thank you.
Or I'd like to make a motion to authorize the town administrator to sign the iWork service agreement presented to us tonight and to take the $5,000 subscription amount out of Department 2400 code enforcement.
I second.
Josh?
Or did I say $5,000?
Yeah,
yes,
Question, should we consider what Carol's idea was, which was 2,500 from this fiscal year, because they're on a calendar year and we're on a fiscal year.
I will amend my motion to say up to $5,000.
Okay, is that okay with you?
Second, yeah.
Okay. All right, discussion? All in favor?
Yeah.
Five, thank you.
that'll be done tomorrow.
All right, good conversation. Thanks, George.
Somebody else.
All right, item 23-110, to discuss a potential workshop on parking at the Stone Pier and take any necessary action. Carol, do you want to talk a little bit about this? It's your idea.
Yeah, and I guess we were considering, you were in a second reading of the parking ordinance, is that right?
We had, one of our future agenda items is a second reading of the current proposed amendment to the parking ordinance, which basically envisions a little bit more strength in enforcement and the ability to actually move vehicles and or boot them in the instance of ongoing violation. So we had discussed the possibility of adding some language about parking at the Stone Pier to that. And then in retrospect, I think it was suggested that we might best have a workshop, a public workshop, to talk about parking at the Stone Pier before adding that in to a proposed amendment to the parking and traffic ordinance, which is an ordinance that the select board has the ability to amend. It doesn't have to go to town meeting, if I understand it correctly.
Right. So my thinking is, as a commuter perhaps, but, for example, George brought up the issue of designated parking for town staff. Not, so right now, the only designated spots are should be transportation company crew spots. We have school in the town that also, are municipal entities. And, the other thing that, this is personal, but I think, there are other members of the community that have expressed the same as whether or not residents should have parking stickers and whether there should be some preferential parking for residents closer to the boat. Because I find myself parking quite a distance away while the contractor vehicles are parked right next to the ferry. And I gotta admit, I'm 60-something years old hauling all my stuff and it doesn't feel right. And I know the town of Long Island has residential parking. So I, rather than like suggest an amendment to the ordinance, though, it's a big enough change that I feel like it may be deserving as a community workshop where we could get some input, but my personal goal would be to, explore those options to make it easier for residents and then maybe essential personnel to park at the Stone Pier and, in preference to transient visitors, contractors, and some of these contractor vehicles take up a lot of space. And I think ultimately, hopefully leading to someday where we might have some satellite parking, but until we do, I think it would be worth considering. That's just my thought, and it's not, and I would be interested to hear what even the community thinks about it.
Okay. Comments from other select board members? Josh?
I agree with everything Carol said. I think we should definitely take a look at that.
Mark?
I realize this is something that's been hanging out there for quite some time. And what I mean is the piece of property that's owned by the golf course. And I think we should get back to discussions with the golf course about that piece of land. And the reason I say that is not because it's going to save the entire facility, make it magically beautiful down there and everybody's gonna have an extra place to park. But if we had that piece of property right now and we could get permission to clear X amount from, DP, Army Corps, DP, I guess. We could require non-residents or contractors to park out in that area up to 25 to 35 cars. And that would take quite a strain off that wharf if you think about it, most of the year, part of the year. And my point is, I'm not sure the golf course quite understands that, we really didn't get very far with those conversations, in my opinion. Maybe that was our fault, their fault, both our fault. I don't know why. But I'm not sure we can promise them that we will never widen the Stone Wharf Road, which is something else we should be really putting back on the capital improvement plate. I'm gonna make sure it gets on there for at least future planning and discussion. But I'm not sure that we should be promising that even if we do a project at the Stone Wharf, we will keep vehicles from parking on the Stone Wharf Road in trade for that piece of property. At some point, there has to be a conversation, in my opinion, where, and I would participate in this conversation if the town wanted me to. It would be public benefit to have that piece of land in conjunction to the use of that stone wharf. That's my opinion. It may be only my opinion. I'm not sure that it would be. And I'm not suggesting eminent domain. The reason I use the term public benefit, that's an easy one to say to the golf course and the general public. There would be some benefit to allowing the town to take over that property. How much benefit? According to how you measure it. But I think we should get back to that discussion. And I agree with Carol. I watched the activity down there. And I try to get people that work for me that don't work on islands not park in the closed spaces. I've actually asked them to. And sometimes they'll be nice and sometimes they defy me because Because I shouldn't have said anything, but that's my opinion. Thanks.
David? Thanks, Mark.
Well, if what Mark is describing, we're coming to pass, it might lessen the parking along the Wharf Road, and that is a benefit of the call. At least it goes to a plan.
At times, if
Might not.
more cars, so, thank you.
Other comments?
I think.
Two quick observations. One is a user of parking spaces / Wharf Road. And the other is just observation at this time of year. Yeah, depending on the time of year, I've had to park within 20 yards of North Road.
So, yeah.
Because of the amount of traffic there. And at the end of the day, I'm trying to get out of here and get out. And to your point, Carol, I gotta shut things around, whatever. The other thing is, this time of year, we've got the plow markers out there. So that if people park on the road, get out a little bit more. There's really no two-way traffic, especially now, all right, because everybody's moved out a little bit more. And, there's a public safety issue there as well. So something, I think you can look at it and not say, there's scheme behind that to get with, I think, the long-term goal, which you're looking at. So.
Dave?
A few years ago, I suggested or recommended or requested that we widen that Warren Road. And it's been a topic of conversation for about 6-8 years. And where does that stand?
It's currently part of the combination of projects that includes Stone Pier improvements, the rationalization of Wharf Road, and the property that Mark mentioned. I think, if I remember correctly, at least one of the reasons that moving forward with that auxiliary parking on the quote unquote golf course property was not voted go forward had to do with making sure that it made sense in the context of those other two projects, Stone Pier and Wharf Road. So within the purview of the Weston Sampson Woods Hole Group project are all three of those things. Now, the conversation tonight begs the question, could that parking area be utilized short-term in a beneficial way that was also consistent with the longer-term design and solution? I can say that so far, the Woods Hole approach has envisioned phases, and that leads to a quicker implementation of what we're talking about. But having said that, I think this agenda item to some degree is affected by this conversation, but to some degree we've gone off on other tracks. The discussion item is, should we have a workshop on parking at the Stone Pier? And I think what Carol explained, the intent of that conversation, that public workshop, is more aimed at parking permits and parking prioritization on the Stone Pier. So the question is, do we want to schedule a workshop, a public workshop to talk about priority of parking at the Stone Pier? Does that capture what you're looking for, Carol?
Yeah, and I agree that the golf course could be a potential long-term solution. I do think that, and I do think the opportunity may be to move on that sooner rather than later.
Yep.
But I kind of take this first step about prioritizing parking down there. I mean, if people prefer, we can wait and explore the golf course instead of the parking prioritization, and maybe, do that first. Maybe that's a better way to approach it. I'm open. I mean, in a way, it offers an option. It's just, I don't know how quickly that option will be put in place in reality.
Mark?
I think reality is exactly the right word to use. Trying to talk to the golf course and think that we're going to get that property anytime soon is probably wishful thinking on our part / my part. I'm always glad to have a conversation about how to improve access and usage to a public facility. my question is always going to be at that meeting, if we decide to do designated or specialized parking usage areas, is it going to be enforceable and manageable?
So,
Not to be negative.
No, I think that was part of it, that was part of the discussion.
The workshop.
so we've talked about it. Is there a motion?
I guess I'll make a motion to schedule a workshop to talk about parking at the Stone Pier and take any necessary action.
Okay. Is there a second? Second by Carol. Discussion?
And I'm sorry, was there a proposed month or date or?
January.
I remember we've got,
I mean,
I'm not disagreeing, we've got budget coming up.
Yeah, well, I don't know, whenever.
I would say that,
Yeah, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but
That's-
that's probably January's wishful thinking.
I would say February 2020.
Does that work for you, John?
That works for me.
Carol, does that work for you in a second? Are you okay seconding that, Carol?
Yep.
Okay. Other discussion? All right, motion on the floor, all in favor, raise your hand. 5. Thank you. Yes, public input, yes, sorry, I missed that.
Well, couple. We've had a workshop on this in the past. I attended it, great deal. I brought up numerous times about widening the road. 35 years ago, I started bringing that up. So that's not new. All the things that you've discussed, and many more were brought up, and a lot were very inexpensive ideas. And we've done nothing. We've taken no action as a town at all, to do any improvements on parking down there. The only thing we've done in my lifetime that I can think of is remove the store, and that gave us 3 or 4 parking spots. It's getting worse, and we failed to move forward. We've had a study done down there, a couple of them, and I would just urge the board to push, to move forward, actually take an action to do something for a change. I mean, we've been talking about this for 35, 40 years, and the practice just gets worse and we do nothing, so please move forward, that's all.
All right. Moving on, item 5, budget goals and strategies. I asked that we put this on here, just to kick off the budget process. And we had a schedule for the budget, and then that schedule had been pulled off the calendar, I noticed. We need to get that back on the calendar in light of changes in staff, but also in light of the fact that we do have the finance committee up and running now. Does anyone want to kick off the conversation relative to high-level goals and strategies? Carol?
So knowing what the charge of the finance committee is, so besides coming up with suggestions for the long term, you know, they're gonna hopefully be able to put together information on what our debt service situation is, what our capacity is. And then there's another person looking at what our current sort of inventory of capital assets are. And to that, we need to add for future capital asset projects, including the fire department and the stone pier. So I think we should, once they get, and that might be later in the budget process, but I think we should have a meeting that's really dedicated to hearing from them about that and about really kind of focus on capital issues, because we spend a lot of time on the minutia in the budget process, but it's really those big ticket items that can have a pretty significant impact. And then my personal thinking, given the year we've had, is my goal for the budget process is not, is to kind of try to keep the status quo. I feel like we aren't really in a position to kind of get too ambitious, and that it should be, you know, cost of living increase and trying to, I think we have a challenge with solid waste from the look of it, and we're gonna have to address that. And then, you know, I think other than that, I think it would be, you may hear some recommendations from the administrative side, and I think we'll have to look at those, but other, you know, in terms of us coming up with ideas, I'm kind of status quo, because I think there are enough other moving parts that are gonna need to be considered.
Good, thank you. Others? Mark?
Is the chairperson of the finance committee Herb?
There is no chair, the way they're operating
Okay.
right now.
It's my hope and kind of my expectation that finance committee will, maybe along with the town administrator, maybe not, meet with each department and talk about, for example, I think the fire department's next purchase for a piece of equipment might be the pump truck. Is that accurate, Ralph?
Tank truck, but we can't really
Tank
do
truck.
that until we get a station that will fit in.
Okay. In other words, meet with the departments as well as look at Stone Wharf. You know, the fire station is obviously fire rescue. You know, are the roads finished? What about Cousins Island Wharf? What about Stone Wharf? So I'm hoping that they can do some of that groundwork to help out the beginning of the process. As far as the department budget, my expectation personally, only speaking for myself, is that if any department comes to us and they need an increase, a request for an increase in the budget, I would like to see some effort for some efficiencies on some other line items if possible. Maybe I say that every year. That's just my way of looking at things, fiscally. Realizing that costs go up, insurance goes up, fuel goes up, you know, wages and benefits go up. I understand that. But I like to see that they've sat down and looked at their entire line items of budget and said, we can do with a little less here, but this needs to increase, so on and so forth. That's gonna be my hope. Okay.
The first part you started with, the finance committee meeting with departments, I wasn't aware that was part charge this year.
So where they're.
Maybe I'm reaching a little.
Right, so where they're at is they want to at least get a current list of the list of current assets that's up to date, because there isn't one. From sort of prior capital plans, they have a good start, but there are things that have been purchased and decommissioned, so they need to get that. And then I think they're trying to put together the beginning of a capital plan, whether or not they can capture all the future capital costs, I don't know, it depends on what the different departments, where they're at. I mean, but I think they can, I don't know if they're gonna have time to meet with every department, I kinda don't think so, they could certainly ask the fire department, you know, what are the next 10 years, what do you think your capital items might be?
But Mark, were you talking about operating expense conversations or capital conversations?
I'm talking about the next capital purchase.
Oh, I got you. Okay.
Or as far as each department is concerned.
Gotcha.
In other words, fire department thinks they need a tank truck.
I thought you meant
Public Works might think they need this truck. Transfer station might think they need another compactor, but whatever it is.
Yep.
I would just like to make sure that we capture as much as we can, realizing that it all doesn't have to be purchased next year. But if you're gonna purchase it in 1, 2, 5 years, it would be helpful. Are you going to start putting money away, or are you going to bond in 5 years? How's it gonna work?
Thanks. Yep. Others, I've got one. So I guess last year was the first time I was as involved in the budgeting processes before. One improvement I'd like to suggest we make is that we standardize an approach to the conversations with the various nonprofits and that we ask them, and just as an example, when you come to your conversation with the select board, please, a week in advance, provide us with not just your budget for the proposed year, but also 2 prior years' actual finances. Showing us your P and L or your operating expense and loss for the prior 2 years. And to get that same format from each one of them in a simple fashion so that we can make the best decisions possible.
And as I've asked in prior years, add a balance sheet to that, because a balance sheet gives a lot of information that.
Bob, if I may?
Yep.
I would like to suggest tonight that you are going to be the budget chairperson for this upcoming budget session. No? Would you rather have me or someone else handle it for you?
I think my plate is pretty full already. I don't want to take on the
Okay.
budget.
Could I ask another question?
Well, Carol had her hand up while
Would
you
you
were.
be interested in doing it?
No, yes, but I'm just wondering if there isn't a more efficient way to do it.
Yeah, that's,
I felt it was a very tedious process that took a lot of time, and I'm not sure. I almost feel like we could ask the town administrator to present a budget. I don't know what the right process is. I'm talking off the top of my head, but to get a budget presentation and pick the big ticket items that we need to discuss in more detail, which I think solid waste is gonna be on there, and then maybe a couple others, might be the administration. And then approach those areas, target those areas, and kind of not get into the weeds about all the other nitty gritty, because we spent a lot of time going through each thing, and I just didn't find it that valuable in the end. And I think we're gonna, from the looks of solid waste, we're gonna have a big increase, because it's already expensive. I think it may require us to look at the fees and really, you know, some kind of waste reduction initiative. And then, there might be a few other areas where we're gonna need to bump things up, and I'd rather spend time on trying to find good solutions than kind of going through each thing one by one.
we have been guilty, myself included, of
We-
spending a lot of time on the departmental areas. And I don't think we meant to. I think we got bogged down.
Just is how it works.
Yeah.
Well,
That's just a suggestion.
I'm not questioning that suggestion at all. I'm thinking about what Mark was looking for. Josh, George,
I'm sorry,
thank you. I was looking that way.
I'm gonna offer something up, but I think we should probably begin to look at this as well. Is take a look at, you mentioned it a little bit when we talked about the fees with respect to solid waste. I think that perhaps taking half a step back and look at your entire fee structure across anything that you charge for fees. Now, you've got some things that are state regulated and things like that you can only add a little bit to. But I think that, you know, user fees, particularly, you know, solid waste, I can almost guarantee you're gonna have to do some serious things that are better than increase. You can, that's gonna be top item. I would say peel back and take a look at other user fees as well. And take a look at when was the last time you adjusted those. It's never pleasant, and one of the things that, you know, gets the first thing, you know, kicked back with respect to the public opinion. But I think it's that time.
And one of the things we talked about but have not implemented is, you know, requiring contractors to get
Requiring contractors as part of the building permit process to have their own dumpsters.
or their own transport of solid waste.
So they'd be responsible. They'd be responsible for obtaining, using, and removing the waste at their expense to
Yeah.
then put back to the home.
And I think this discussion is a detail we don't want to get
Right,
into right now.
I'm just saying
Right.
that's kind of the same
Yeah.
idea. I do, so. The way we did it last year, we went through, I'm trying to remember, we went through the departments, we had a day for the I do think the nonprofits require their own
Yes.
thing.
They do.
But I think what I could almost envision dealing with the department, the sort of departmental budgets, that here's the first draft. Let's see where the hot spots are, come back to address those. You know, maybe have 2 or 3 iterations on those, but not necessarily go through line by line. That's what I was.
Yep, yep. And what I was reconsidering was what Mark suggested. It was a knee-jerk reaction. I wasn't expecting to hear that suggestion, but I think I'd be fine leading the budget conversation. I think it's just part of the chair's responsibility. The way we've been going, I think it's fine.
And if you decide you don't wanna, I'll do it.
Yeah.
But I think Carol's point is a good one. You know, anything we can do to get more efficient.
Yeah.
As a town in general, is going to be a positive move, not just for this present board and the public that sits there and listens to it and participates sometimes. God love them, but future boards, and maybe the finance committee is gonna end up helping with some of the stuff, I believe that it will.
Yeah, and I also think that part of the finance committee charge is to have a public meeting. Or, you know, have a public presentation to the public about kind of where the budget has been and where we are now. Basically some of these kind of larger, you know, issues. And then we might follow that up with a specific presentation, particularly if we have areas that are gonna need some increased, funding. Then I think we could explain it in that context, because I don't think we've done a very good job of explaining our budget to the community. We haven't done a town report. So people just show up, they get the warrant in the mail, and that's it. And so we can see if a public meeting is the right way to go, or maybe it is a town report, but that's partly what the finance committee is tasked with. And to the school committee's defense, they had a public meeting, nobody showed. So the following year, they didn't have a public meeting and kind of got, you know,
Lambasted.
they meet at town meeting. So I think we have to find the right mechanism, but it is part of the finance committee's task in 2024 is to help facilitate that process. So I think we should do that, because I have a feeling this budget's gonna maybe look different coming out the other end.
Yep. I think the other topic that's been mentioned along those lines, I think the school committee is thinking about, I think we would do well to think about, is whether it's delivered by mail, whether it's delivered by PDF online, or both. An annotated budget
Right.
that goes out to the public well in advance of town meeting that says, here's last year, this item, here's last year, here's this year, this is why. That could be, that explanation as to why in some cases might be departmental in nature. For a major item like recycling fees, that could be a specific line item, but an annotated budget that helped the public understand the logic behind the proposed budget, I think would be beneficial.
Yeah, but, and I'll let George speak, but also, in my opinion, if the finance committee can get to a point, I believe they will, where they can also hold a public discussion and lay it out for people to actually see and hear verbally, and maybe even have something on a screen that can have some real value before town meeting.
Yep.
Go ahead, George. Thank you.
Real briefly, there's another option at your disposal, is that once you have the budget kind of finalized and you know where your hot points are gonna be, you can create a recording, pop it up on YouTube, okay? Outlining and having, it's, you know, I don't call it commercial, but it's like, you know, it's an intro ahead of time. And in addition to whatever you currently sent out, that way, you know, the person sitting at home, they're gonna get the paper, but now they're gonna be able to, with a little bit, well, high degree of specificity in there. And they can, they can play it back, you know, and say, okay, oh yeah, they covered this, here's the reasons why, all right? Well, you know, it's like anything else, you send paper, do they read it? Whatever, but I would think that maybe in an online forum like that would certainly be, you know, advantageous to the board at least, when it comes to town meeting.
Yep.
Yeah, I think sort of the finance committee is gonna make some suggestions on the delivery method, and I think for this community, might need paper and might need something else.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of a
Yeah.
bimodal community.
Other goals and aspirations of the lofty variety from the board? From the public? Pam,
So,
Pam,
oh, yeah.
sorry.
You need to sit up in another.
Is
chair.
anyone there?
Oh, there's lots of people
There's
there.
a lot of people on those owls.
This is available on YouTube, so people will be watching tomorrow.
Okay. Well, hello, everyone. Last year I sat in on the budget process, and I don't think I missed a meeting. And one of the things that, I learned, is that there are very different priorities on the board. And my suggestion would be to go through the comprehensive plan, identify, 10 or so priorities, and align the board around those priorities. Then the budgeting, I think, becomes much easier when the priorities are aligned. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments? All right, thank you. Thank you, everybody. Moving on, is there other business that the board would bring up at this time?
Just an update on, Weston and Sampson. I think I copied you guys all in the email, but the next thing we're waiting on is the bathymetric survey. It could be any day now. And then they will hope to wrap up their stuff in the early spring. We really lost about 6 months waiting for this information from the state and NOAA. And so I think they're full speed ahead. We'll wrap that up, and that will help to inform the issue on phasing in the golf course parking lot and even the road widening, because part of the decision process is the elevation of the road. So I think we do need that piece as soon as possible.
But we've now taken steps to move forward, not wait for the state's delayed process, and we expect the results from that in
Spring,
weeks, spring, okay.
I can't say exactly.
Yep. Other business? All right, moving on to communications. I have one. I see the. I lost it. There was an email from John Whitaker. John Whitaker is, I think, of the family. The family with whom we did the land swap to create a larger parcel. Grinnell's, thank you, yes. He's raising the issue again about, the unsatisfactory, from his viewpoint, nature of the land that they swapped for. I'll read it. It says, hello. I thought I forwarded this to everybody. I did forward this. Okay. Hello, gentlemen. He addressed it to George, the TA, to Bob and Mark. We had a meeting last winter with Bo and Vika related to the land swap on North and Division Point Road between the town and Grinnell Cottage that went through a few years ago. We had 2 different soil tests and both agreed that the lot we received is a wood wetland and not suitable for development. We meet to discuss the possibility of a reswap. I'm guessing he meant to type we need. Or can we meet? Yep. I saw that Bo is no longer on the board. Is there someone new on the board that is acting as a point person on this issue? Included is the last email thread with Bo on this topic. Thanks, John Whitaker. So that's Carol.
I thought we had sort of made a decision at a board meeting about this.
I believe we did.
And so did that not get communicated to them?
I don't.
What was the communication?
So the communication from Bo on May 12th
after vote. I thought we took this up when Jen was chair.
No, this is, let me read what Bo wrote. Yes, no, this communication came from Bo, but May 2023. So that would have been when Jen was chair.
Oh.
So the communication, why it was from Bo, I don't know.
Down over the hill on Division right before Bluff Hill.
Bo's communication on May 12th, John, after bringing the report to the board, they wanted a second opinion from a wet soil analysis. Parentheses, this is probably not the correct name, on your property. They did recommend Brady Frick has a good contact. Thanks, Bo. On the same day, John Whitaker replied to Bo, Dave was our second opinion. By Dave, I assume he means Dave Chapman. We originally had it tested by Hope Hampton of Hampton Associates in June 2022. Attaches a letter she sent us. It refers to 2 lots because we already started conversations with the surveyor to subdivide the lot, which we stopped pursuing after Hope's site visit. If Hope's letter doesn't satisfy the need for a second opinion, you be more specific about what you need? I Googled, searched wet soil analysis main septic and didn't get any relevant hits. If this is not the correct name, can you provide the correct name? And Bo replied on the same day to John Whitaker with a copy to a couple of family members in Vika. Okay, thank you, I'll pass this along. And then the next communication is on December 12th from Mr. Whitaker saying, where are we on this?
Do I remember correctly that in the prior select board meeting, we had sort of come to the consensus that the property transfer occurred and we made no guarantee of a buildable lot? Is that the correct recollection?
Well, David wasn't here for that.
I wasn't here for that, I don't
Oh, it's Josh. Oh,
Oh, no, Josh.
know.
Well, I remember the conversation, as I recall, the direction we took was that there was the opportunity for due diligence in advance of the swap. And that
right, same.
3 test pits didn't indicate unsuitability on the entire property. And we were not interested in a land swap,
And that,
something to that effect.
right, so I think we thought it was the end of the discussion. But I don't think doesn't look like that was communicated to the property.
Correct.
I'm sorry, was that action taken prior to July 1st?
Oh, no, I think so, probably.
I don't have any.
Based on the timing of these emails, I'd say yes.
I think so,
Because I'm
but,
trying to look up the meeting, see the
Gotcha.
kind of meeting that it's on it.
yeah, I'm not sure, I think we could go back, I definitely remember the discussion, and I remember exactly how, the
Would
basic,
be in minutes.
yeah,
So I'm trying to find.
It was
we can go back
prior
and,
to me being on the.
I would suggest that we put this on the agenda for the next,
As an official.
kind of have an official, of course, response.
Yep. So no need to find it now, George, we can
Okay.
find it.
But I,
So maybe we could
yeah,
move this along to.
well, we have 2 board members who weren't there at the time, so.
Yeah,
I
it
was
is.
just trying to be helpful.
Yep.
Thank you.
Other items of communications. All right, seeing none, items to be placed on a future agenda. I just wrote down, a response to Mr. Whitaker. And, that will be at the next meeting. And then, I just made a random list of future agenda items, whether they're on the next meeting or as deemed appropriate. When we get a response from the DEP, that would certainly be relative to Bennett's. They were gonna provide a write-up. We may not have that by the next meeting, but when we get it, we'll have it on the next meeting after that. Another future agenda item would be to schedule a workshop with the DEP for a general shoreline conversation. Another future agenda item would be to discuss the MOU with the rec center. Do we want to try to put that one on our next meeting?
I think we need to distribute it so that people read it before we discuss it, so I don't know how you want to handle that.
It would be part of the packet if we put it on the agenda.
Yeah, I guess we can do that.
Before we go any further with discussing future agenda items, given that we don't currently have a schedule for the budget conversations, our next meeting will be in early January. Should we focus on the budget in that meeting?
We typically had separate meetings on the budget, right?
Yeah. I think some of the budget meetings in the past were at our regularly scheduled slot, others were not. I would propose we not hit the budget hard at that first meeting because we'll need time for staff to prepare the information we need to have a valid conversation. Carol?
So maybe at that first meeting, we might have the audit report for 2023. Plus, if we could get just a reconciled budget, final budget expenditures from fiscal year 23, sort of as the starting point. In other words, what did we actually do last year? I think, so we can all, because these guys haven't really had a chance to see it, I think that would be good information to start with. And maybe just, we could spend a little time on it.
Yeah, if I may, it does help to have 1 or 2 years of history.
Yeah, maybe 2 years would be good. And I would ask that the town administrator, somebody try to produce that, maybe not on the first of January meeting, but maybe the second one.
Okay, so that would be,
January 3rd is pretty,
Pretty quick.
holidays.
yeah. So we'll do that on, that conversation we'll have on January 17th. Okay? MOU, so back to the MOU with the rec. Do we want to do that January 3rd?
So you want the FY 22 and 23 numbers?
Please. Yep. Yep. Workshop, parking.
At the January 3rd meeting, we may need an executive session to discuss personnel.
I think we do.
And we also may need to appoint the clerk.
Yes.
Yes.
Mhm.
Point clerk. And we did not finalize our discussion on a community workshop relative to the stone pier. Did we actually decide to schedule such a workshop?
For parking,
Yes.
February.
We said we're gonna schedule that in February. Okay, all right.
so I think we'll schedule it at the next meeting. It doesn't have to be an agenda item per se. But
Okay.
it's good.
Schedule for February.
Oh, I know what I was thinking of. This is something I've been considering. I think I've mentioned it before, but based on our meeting with, Jensen and Baird, I really feel like we
Oh, yeah.
would benefit from a conversation with an attorney about alternatives or resolutions to these multiple land use cases. And what I would recommend is that we try to set up an executive session, and I would suggest we actually talk to Mary Costigan, who worked with the Board of Appeals, as sort of an independent perspective on how we might be able to resolve these as opposed to going into everybody spending a lot of money. And I just think that she might be a good entity in that she's not directly involved in the cases, but at the same time familiar with some of the details.
I agree.
So you're suggesting an executive session, perhaps January 3rd with Mary Costigan. Okay,
And what I would suggest is that, the chair could call her ahead of time and kind of give her the upshot of what the objective would be and see what she might need for information. And it's not that I'm saying I'm unhappy with the attorney that's, working with the town on this. I just think it would be helpful to have somebody one step removed, because they're very embedded in the case.
Also, if I may, Bob, the
Please.
person you're referring to has some real good experience in the land use area.
And she worked with the Board of Appeals, so she's pretty familiar with the case, and I do think that our best option is to, we are not in a good position as a community in this particular situation, I don't think, legally. And I
We can
think,
explore that conversation when we have the executive session. Is that okay with the board?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Any other future agenda items? All right,
We have to approve the
Minutes.
minutes from December sixth.
Was they make a motion?
Carol, you had a question about the motion.
yep, and so I sent that out to everybody,
Yeah,
but that's my recollection, so
Can you
I,
recap that, please, Carol?
Yeah.
Restate it?
so my recollection, I don't know if I have a couple of minutes. So we had an executive session that was described at number 10. And what I didn't remember is that we actually had a motion to procure consulting services from the Maine Municipal Association for the remainder of December 2023. And, I mean, maybe we did, I just thought I should mention that I didn't remember that, and that I wouldn't imagine doing that without appropriating some kind of funding and a source of the funding. So I'm just throwing that out there.
I believe that motion was actually to secure the services of, Mitch.
But did we actually make a motion?
Yes.
I believe we did after executive session.
Okay, well, that's maybe why I'm confused, but it's odd that we didn't do that with our,
Retired, wanted to go home.
okay, so I
We
think
came
that
out
needs
of
to be
executive
corrected.
session.
You might executive session.
Then we made the motion.
Motion was made at that point, because I
So it would be, so that needs to be corrected to
Re-
be Mitch Berkowitz?
Yes, and we had already allocated the funding for that at that point. We had already, I believe we had already in a prior meeting allocated funding, so this was just confirming that we were going forward with that relationship.
Maybe, but at any rate, this is not correct the way.
Right, it needs to be changed from the Maine Municipal Association to read Mitch Berkowitz.
Berkowitz.
Yep, Berkowitz. So with that amendment, is there a motion, any other comments on the agenda?
No.
With that amendment, is there,
I make a motion to approve the minutes from December 6th, 2023.
motion by Josh, is there a second? Second by Carol, discussion? All in favor? 5-0. All right. Oh, I did those out of order. All right, I think that's it. I entertain a motion to adjourn. So moved by David, second by Mark, all in favor? Thank you so much.
Well, I'm sorry.
walk me.
What? I don't remember any of that. I do, yeah. I mean,